I think the big one is because almost all forms of, especially when you're talking about feature storytelling, even what's considered a low budget animated film is very expensive. So if you're doing a low budget animated film, you're probably going to do it at a small studio. So relatively to them, $50 million is the same as $150 million at like a DreamWorks or a Pixar. So there's a lot of money involved. I personally think, well, you know, you got into the business, you knew what that gamble was, you know that there's a lot of money that's involved in creating this. One of the things I forgot to mention in my presentation is my experience working with Google is because I had so much creative freedom, we actually were more efficient. We actually saved money because I didn't have to spend a year having 20 people weigh in on what a character design should look like. I could make the decision and we could get it done in 3 weeks. Any practical person could look at that and say, do you want to spend 3 weeks on character design or do you want to spend a year on it, and say, we're going to save a ton of money and we could actually release. I think, you know, you look at the production schedule of a film and it's like 3 or 4 years. People are trying to shorten that process without changing the pipeline at all, which is insane, because what it means is, you know, you never see your family, you never sleep. It's insane. I think if they opened it up and trusted the filmmakers that they hire, who are trying to tell really personal stories in some instances, and let them make the decision and trust that decision, they would find that they could actually get more films out for less money on shorter schedules. It's certainly, I would love to try what I did with Google with, you know, I would take less money and work with a smaller budget to have that freedom. Now, I don't think every filmmaker, it's not going to work for every filmmaker, but a lot of the guys that I know, like whether it's Mark or Jorge, we have a very clear idea of what we want because we do personal projects. So, you know, to boil the reason down to, I get it, I understand, you're putting a lot of money into us, but that's the business you chose to be in. So if you're going to hire us, let us do our job, because for us, you know, if we make a film that's not good, we get blamed for it. So any decision that we make, we're trying to make the best film that we can, not the best film that is going to. We're not trying to market toys. We're not trying to do that. I think that you'll find that the films that are most successful, original ideas, original properties. Star Wars was an original property. Marvel Comics are original properties. Toy Story is an original property. Those guys told great stories, and now they created their own franchises. I think if you tell good stories and make sure that people know that they're out there, then you'll make money, and you can make it in a more efficient, fun way. So they shouldn't take as long as they do. I've been pretty vocal about this at the studios, that character design is the only discipline within a feature structure that I've been in that doesn't have a supervisory role. You have a story supervisor, you have an art director and a production designer. As a character designer, you'll get notes from an art director and a production designer. Now, some production designers are great and they can give really good notes on character design, but the expert in the room is a character designer, but they're treated like just another member of the crew. So you're immediately kind of put, you know, politically in the hierarchy of a studio, you're put at a level where you're not in a lead role, you're not in a lead position. Now at Pixar, they have a character art director. And so they've elevated them, they've got a title. And those titles are important despite what people will say, your title's not important. Of course it is in a traditional studio system, it is important. So that's one thing that character designers have to constantly struggle against. The other part of it is the character's the first thing everybody sees, it's what's gonna go in the backpack, it's gonna be in a video game or a toy shelf. That's where a lot of their merchandise is gonna come from. So they're really precious about it, I get that. I just don't think, as you've said, I go on to some films and you'll see literally, I've seen 900 versions of a character. And I would joke, I said, put a blindfold on me, spin me around, and let my hand land on a character, and that's just as good as any other. Except you could do that in a much shorter time instead of dragging it on and spending all this money. You know, I know people want to spend less and less money on these things. Well then, let's make a decision and let's make it now, because you know, a quarter of an inch on a nose here, or you know, a tone different on the hair here, audience ultimately doesn't care if they don't care about the character. That's the most important thing, if they care about the character. So you could spend a year on it, you can spend 3 months on it, but if story's not doing its job and you don't care about the character, it ultimately doesn't matter. So I think it's just people get way too precious about it, when they could just move on and say, does it function? Does it tell the story? Does it work best for the story? Yep, okay, let's move on. Absolutely. I think you could say it across the board with big films and small films. You look at, I can definitely see, but this has happened for a long time. In the 50s and 60s, Milt Kahl drove a lot of the character design style at Disney. That still kind of carries on today. Glenn Keane, who is, everybody knows is one of the best artists out there, he had a strong influence on a lot of artists that are working there now, and I think you can still feel his influence through films. You see it, when you can take a character, and they took Rapunzel from Tangled and they put her in Frozen, and she fits in, she's in like a background shot. Those are the same. Now, they function story-wise, it works fine. But I think you could push it and still function the story, But if I look at even a smaller studio, look at some place like Leica. Leica's characters don't look like Disney's characters, but I think you can see there's a sameness even there between films. They try to push asymmetry as opposed to symmetry that you would see in other characters. I think, unfortunately, people get set into a house style because they're thinking about branding. And so it's difficult for them to break out of it because they think they'll lose their identity in the market. But I want to see more variation. So yeah, that's my long answer. Yeah, it's the same. And all the artists are like, man, wouldn't it be great if we could tell stories with different looks and like really make the development artwork and the film look just like each other. Jorge in Book of Life, man, he nailed it. You look at the Viz Dev paintings next to the final shots, you can't tell the difference. That to me is success, in design at least. View has been really great, and what I like about it is the intimacy of the conference. This is my first time here, but there's been a lot of opportunity to interact with not just other artists, but folks like yourself who love what we're doing, you're fans of it, you're excited by it, and also to interact with students and other people outside of it. And because there are technical aspects to it. I've seen some technical presentations here, but then there are historical presentations, there are narrative presentations. It seems like there's a good variety to it. So why I think it's good for the industry, for me to be able to come outside of the US where I'm kind of entrenched in the big studio system and to come to a place like Italy and to experience with my colleagues a different cultural point of view on animation, it's really great. And I get to take that inspiration back with me and bring that to whatever project I'm going to work on.